Hi, welcome back to my channel and a new video. Today I'm going to be giving you my top 5 worst horror movies of 2023. And now I have done my top 5 best, so I'll leave a link for you here if you haven't seen that video yet. But after doing my wrap up and conclusion for the year, these were the 5 horror movies that came out at the bottom of my list. And they're not the worst set of movies ever. My number 1 is the only one that I really didn't enjoy. But these aren't the worst. And, you know, generally I don't like to go out and see movies that I know I'm going to hate. Of course, if there's a premise that I'm interested in and it's had a mixed reaction from people, I'll still go and see it and make up my own minds. I can think of loads of movies where I've had just a completely different opinion than other people too. So it is good to give things a chance. But, you know, things like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, I was like, this just isn't happening, you know, wasting my hard-earned and 2 hours on my life on a movie that I know I'm going to hate. I wasn't prepared to do it, so these aren't the worst movies ever, but all 5 of these are ones you could happily go your whole life without ever seeing and you won't have missed a thing. So anyway, please do join me as well in the comments and let me know what were your worst horror films that you saw in 2023. So anyway, let's get into my list. My number 5 choice is going to be Insidious The Red Door. And for anybody that saw my review of this will know I was fairly positive on it. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 rating. But it's one of those movies where the more and more I've thought about it, the more I don't like it. And I just feel like I gave it way too much of a pass in that review. You know, I went to go and see it on a Friday night and I was feeling good. I kind of wanted to be positive about it. So I left the movie thinking, yeah, that was okay. I thought it was all right. But the more and more I've thought about it, I just feel like it's a bad rehash of that original that James Wan did. And where he brought us a film that was full of really creative sequences, really interesting scare scenes that have stuck with me and everything like that. This film is just inferior in every way to that original. And even though it does bring back the same characters, the same actors, I didn't like the family dynamic anywhere near as much as I did in the original as well. And, you know, Patrick Wilson is someone that I really do like. I love him as an actor. And I was interested to see what he was going to do here with this latest Insidious film. Hopefully bring something fresh to the franchise. You know, we're 5 movies in now. And I really just don't feel like he did, to be honest. There's nothing original about this. It simply is just a worse version of the movies that came before it. And even The Last Key, which most people, I think, find to be the worst one of all of the Insidious films, even that, I think, had some creative moments and some unique aspects about it. And there's more things about that entry that have stuck with me than this one. And I saw that even longer ago than I did The Red Door. So I get some people now who have never seen an Insidious movie before, maybe some younger audiences who went out to go and see this. They'll probably think this is okay. It's not the worst movie, but I just feel like when you're 5 sequels in at this point, this simply just isn't good enough. And when you know how much money these Insidious films make, you know, the box office on these are enormous. So they're just going to keep cranking them out until they run out of steam. And this far in, I just can't give a movie like this a pass, to be honest. So inferior to the original in every way and can't recommend this horror film at all. So that's going to be number 5 on my list. So my number 4 choice is going to be VHS 85. And it feels like a bit of a shame to have this movie on here because the first 2 I was actually quite a big fan of. For anybody who doesn't know what the VHS movies are, they're basically a series of horror shorts done by usually well-known horror directors. And they'll usually have this kind of through-line story that connects them all. And they are found footage movies as well. They're found footage shorts. And a lot of them have had these really creative ones where they've had a lot of really interesting sequences, some pretty scary stuff on them. And a few of them have really worked for me, particularly on the first one. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the one with the group of guys bring the girl home. I thought the direction that went in was really crazy, really unique and pretty terrifying as well. So after that, I was always intrigued to see what they were going to do with these shorts. But I feel like by the time you get to VHS 85, when you've seen a number of these already, there ends up being a bit of a predictability about them where you just want, you know, a lot of these are all built around having this final twist, this final big, insane conclusion. And once you've seen loads of them, they just don't have that surprise element anymore, and I start to get a bit bored by them. And I feel like There's something exhausting about watching them anyway, where obviously they're found footage, they're a bit headache inducing, they've got quite a seedy feel about them as well, they're very gory and harsh to watch, so they're already a bit of a draining experience, and when you don't feel like you can take something away from them after or be really shocked by the twist or conclusion, I feel like there isn't much left. There was one shot here which I did like, where it's the group of characters, the guy on the boat, and this particular thing happens, and I thought that was really interesting. But then they tried to do this unique thing where they cut it short and bring it back in a later shot, but I just felt like the way they did this, the effect was lost by the time you got round to concluding this story. So even when they tried to do something unique with this one, it hasn't entirely paid off. So overall, if you haven't seen a VHS film before, it may work for you, but I just feel like once you've seen 3 or 4 of these, I'm just a bit tired of them, to be honest. And I think the shorts on here aren't as good as ones we've seen before. A couple on here really didn't work as well, so not a movie I could recommend. If you're going to see a VHS movie, I would definitely just stick to the first one. So my number 4 choice is Exorcist Believer. And this is the latest David Gordon Green horror film, and I feel like it was only a matter of time before we got something like this, just given how successful his Halloween movies were. And it really just feels like they came to this one with a tick list, where you have to reference a load of moments from the original film. They have to bring back the original actors and find a way to kind of shoehorn them into the story here. And it all round, it feels like a studio product and was here to generate money. They've decided on making a trilogy before even seeing if the first movie was going to work with people, and that to me is just always a bad sign. After seeing this, I just don't feel like they had anywhere near enough material to justify bringing back this story, bringing back this franchise over so many years. And even just getting into the movie itself, it doesn't work. The first 20-30 minutes, I think, is where it's at its best, where these 2 different families are set up, where you've got one family who is religious, comes from a religious background, and the others are those that have kind of given up on faith, given things that have happened to them, tragedies in their past. And it kind of shows the dynamic between these 2 different families when these girls initially go missing. And the whole intrigue around this mystery of their disappearance, I feel like, is when the story is at its most engaging. That's when I was most kind of hooked by it. The second half of this movie is where you really get into the problems, where for a start, a lot of the character development is just really poor. A lot of the dialogue and the interactions just felt very unnatural to me. And just on a story level as well, there's something about the lack of details they give you to what's going on in each scene, where the way they connect to each other just doesn't feel right. It ends up feeling really disjointed to me. So there's certain moments where I don't really understand how certain characters have come to certain conclusions, and there's certain things about it that just feel off. That's the best way I can describe it. And as everyone's already pointed out already, the conclusion to this is horrible. Where you've got this final exorcism scene with these 2 girls. And for people who have seen The Exorcist, which is a film I love, by the way, I have reviewed it on the channel, I love the film, and it is set within within the Christian worldview. Like, the story is consistent within that. And as I've said before, I'm not a religious person at all myself, but I can really get into the story here because it's consistent within its ideology and everything like that. Whereas here, it kind of throws that out the window and throws a load of inconsistencies into that, so that it no longer makes sense within that worldview. So when you look at this film and really think about it, I really feel like the whole conclusion to it just makes no sense whatsoever. So I can definitely understand why a lot of people have watched this and just feel like it's just an awful ending to this. So not a good movie, and not one I'd ever recommend, and I can't say I'd be too disappointed if they end up cancelling this trilogy. My number 2 choice is going to be It's a Wonderful Knife. This was a really bland and boring film. I really didn't like this one. I did review it recently if you wanted to hear more of my thoughts here, but I didn't have high expectations. I recently watched Totally Killer, which is a movie very similar to this. A lot of these movies are on this trend at the moment, where it's these horror comedy spins on a classic movie. And totally killer for what it was. I thought it was a lot of fun. You know, it was funny. I thought the kills were really good. The slasher elements really worked. It had some good tension, and it had a really charming lead actress. So it passed the time quite nicely. It was an entertaining film, and that's all I wanted from this one. But this one basically fails on every single one of those levels, and it had no reason to. Like, you've got a talented cast here. You've got Justin Long, you've got Catherine Isabel, both of whom I really love, and they're completely wasted here. And, you know, the first 20-30 minutes is where it's really trying its hardest to be a comedy, but none of the jokes landed. I thought the dynamic between this family just felt very unnatural as well, and really awkward. It just didn't feel like they even knew each other. They didn't feel like a real family to me. So when it tries to get into more of the emotional parts in the second half, none of that works at all. None of it connects. And then the second half of the film, it gets a lot more serious and suddenly goes into being a full-on horror. But even from that perspective, it doesn't work, where the kills aren't interesting, it's not scary in the slightest, there's no tension. And overall, I was just bored by the movie. I couldn't connect with the characters. I didn't laugh. I didn't jump. I wasn't scared. There was just nothing here to recommend about it. It's a bland movie, and you know, as I said in my review, it's one that by tomorrow, when the end of 2023 comes, nobody is ever going to hear about this movie ever again, and all the better for it, because this was just a complete waste of time. My number one choice, though, which was a very easy one for me, and a movie that I know a lot of people out there say they really like, but that is Skinamarink. I really did not enjoy this film at all, and I don't like to be really hard on what is effectively an independent film. You know, it's a very, very low budget, almost student type film, and I appreciate that people will work very hard to get these kind of movies done, but given how much money this thing has made, I'm willing to put aside my sympathy for the sake of this review, because I absolutely couldn't stand this movie, if I'm honest. The thought of watching this again fills me with dread. 105 minutes of pure pain to withstand this experience that is Skinamarink. I thought it was a terrible film. It's one of those movies where a lot of people say they love it because of its artistic merit. And by artistic merit, all I can see is that it's doing a load of weird and unusual stuff and calling itself art. To me, resting a camera round in different corners of a room, filming the side of a wall, filming a wardrobe, people's ankles for nearly 2 hours, call it art if you want. That doesn't mean anything to me. So I found it an exhausting experience trying to get through it. It was painful to watch. I know some people have said maybe if it was a short film, it could have worked, because I would say there is maybe 1 or 2 moments that do have a little bit of a creepy factor about them. And yeah, okay, if you wanted to bring that as a short film, fine. And you know, because the premise of the film is kind of weird and intriguing. All they say about it is that it's this family that it's from the perspective of these 2 kids, where in the night they wake up, their parents are gone, and the windows and the doors to the house are missing, and they're hearing things, and it's effectively like the perspective of a child's nightmare. But you know, when you start talking about dreams and nightmares, you can effectively have anything happen. You can do anything. It doesn't have to make sense. There's no rules there, so you could really do something creative with that. And this movie doesn't. It's just a painful experience to get through. And when people say they love this one, I'm just not sure what they're saying. Whether they've actually rewatched this thing again since, I'd be interested to know. But whatever people are seeing in this, I'm telling you, it does not work for me. This is by far the only movie on this list that I could say I genuinely hated pretty much every single minute of it, and it's a movie that I'm never going to watch again. Can't recommend this one to anyone. So feels a bit harsh. I know it's a low budget independent film, but I have to be honest, this was my experience with watching this. I couldn't stand the movie, so easily my number one, Skinamarink. So that is my list for the top 5 worst horror movies of 2023. Please do let me know down in the comments whether you agree with my list, or maybe have I missed some horror movies that were even worse than these. I know I may get a few comments about Skinamarink. I know there's some people that really liked that one, but it's not for me, that's for sure. So let me know all of your thoughts down below. Also, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you've been enjoying my content. I'm actually just about to hit 100 subscribers, which would be an amazing end to this year if you could get me to that number. Never thought I'd manage it, but here we are, which is amazing. So thank you so much to everybody that has already subscribed to this channel. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.